All right, good morning. Welcome to the Rise and Grind Morning Show. It is February 13th today. We're going to be getting loaded with a bunch of topics this morning. So welcome into the Rise and Grind Morning Show, February 13th. Here we go. We're going to be talking about NFL news, a little bit more of Eagles drama today. We're going to be dipping into what Jalen Hurts and apparently Josh Sweat talked about after the MVP was handed out. Riley's not going to be able to join us this morning. He's still not feeling well, so we're going to cover his topics this morning. Micah Parsons potentially recruiting Myles Garrett to the Cowboys. And then I've got a little tidbit about NFL rumors and the non-legit accounts out there making headlines, I guess, for people to use clickbait. Ohio State hired a former Detroit Lion. What does that mean for the Michigan Wolverines? Are they going to be in contention this season, or is Ohio State back on the prowl and keeping Michigan underneath? So next up would be Joe Burrow. We're going to talk a little bit about Cadarius Tony, kind of a touchy subject, and we're going to dip into Lions news and rumors, an argument. Eric put together an article today, or put together a segment today about re-signing Marcus Davenport. And so that's the main headline of the day, and then we're going to get into a little bit more of primetime coverage here, talking about your Detroit Lions, coordinators, and Super Bowls, all that coming up here when we come back. All right, Eric, so we're back. Good morning, man. How are you this morning?
Really good. We did not get snowocalypse up here, so I'm doing really well.
Oh, we are. It's been nonstop. I'd say we probably got, 8 inches of light, fluffy, but hard, compact snow. It's weird snow.
Yeah, it's really dense.
Yeah. It's like just, millions of flurries, not just a big lake effect. It's weird, but anyway, I apologize about the intro. I literally had to choke, and I was trying to hold it back. I swallowed some coffee, did not go down right. So anyway, let's get into today, man. There's so much news, it seems like, to cover. I thought that we were going to have trouble, kind of like I did last year doing the off season, but I rolled right into free agency and draft, and honestly, I haven't even really covered much of that this week. So we'll do more of that. I wanted to get into the second half of movie day with Brad Holmes' presser. I think I'm going to try to save that for tomorrow or maybe the evening. Maybe I'll do an evening show tonight and do that with everybody. But you've got some topics. I have some topics. Riley left us some topics. We've got a jam-packed show that we're going to try to get to. And our goal is to try to get segments out of this. So just bear with us if we're not in the chat right away. But appreciate you all being in the chat this morning. We have Trace, Myron, Lions Blood, Mr. Detroit City, Moonscar, my son Jade. Good morning. Jay Cruisin, Kevin Barr. Love you too, buddy. Good morning, Jade. Is Christian in there too? I don't know if he's in there this morning. Of course, we've got Orner U of M Dad, John Desage, King SJ. Got a light crew so far. Hopefully we fill up here in the next 20, 30 minutes. Likes up to 75. We turn the ads off. Let's just get it done. If we don't get 75 people in for some reason, we'll just use the 75% rule. As long as we get 75% of active viewers liking, we'll turn the ads off so that we can pay YouTube and make them happy. So kick us off, Eric. What do we have right away for NFL news?
All right, Super Bowl MVP. So Jalen Hurts was voted the Super Bowl MVP, a distinction that the Eagles defensive end Josh Sweat believes should have went to him. He went on to say, "I should have had it. I could have had it. It's all good though." And I found this little article from MSN about Josh Sweat being upset that he did not get the MVP. And this goes on to say that Sweat led an impressive effort by the Eagles defense on Sunday, putting up 6 tackles, 2.5 sacks, and multiple pressures on Patrick Mahomes, one of his worst performances in a Chiefs uniform. Hurts, meanwhile, got the job done on offense. The Eagles quarterback went 17 for 22 for 221 yards and 2 touchdowns, but also threw an interception. Sweat may have a fair point, but voters tend to lean on offensive players, especially quarterbacks, when it comes to MVP. And this article goes on to talk about how Hurts became the 34th quarterback in 59 editions of the Super Bowl to be named MVP of the game. Only 10 times the winner of the award was a defensive player, which shows that Sweat had it tougher. So apparently this is voted on 80% by people that actually get a vote, and then 20% by fan voting. I did not know the MVP of the Super Bowl was partially due to fan voting. Had you ever heard that before?
I have never heard that before, but I don't even, where would you vote? And how quickly would you vote?
Yeah.
I don't see anything pop up, watching the Super Bowl, but the last time I know that a Super Bowl MVP was a defensive player was Von Miller. And I think that was back in 15 or 16.
Yeah.
Something like that. Did you pull anything on defensive players at all?
No, I just thought this was rather interesting that, he's basically throwing his teammate under the bus that he thought he should have got it. And I see where he has a point. I would have gave it to the defense as a whole, maybe not just to Josh Sweat, because I didn't think he had that great of a game. But I do feel that the 11 players on defense had more to do with this game than Jalen Hurts did.
See, I would disagree to a point and agree. I guess I see his point, but I wouldn't have given it to Josh Sweat. So I disagree with him. If a defensive player should have received an MVP award, I think you have to look at how the game went down, right? This game was won in the first half. All the sacks happened in the second half. Well, the start of the 8th possession, there was 1 sack on Patrick Mahomes. Zach Bond really clinched the game with that interception before halftime. Cooper DeJean really reset that game, and that was the big turning point. So I would make an argument for Bond or DeJean to have an opportunity, or, maybe the NFL needs to look at this differently. Maybe there needs to be multiple MVPs. Maybe there needs to be a defensive and an offensive. I mean, why shouldn't there be? Maybe there should be 2 MVPs, but I just pulled it up. So Von Miller was 2016 Super Bowl 50. And astonishingly enough, Malcolm Smith won it in 2014. So 2 years apart, and then you have to go all the way back from Super Bowl 48, 11 years prior, to Dexter Jackson in 03 from the Tampa Bay Bucks, and then Ray Lewis in 01 in Super Bowl 35. Man, I can't believe how old I am. Larry Brown in 1996, Richard Dent in 86, Harvey Martin and Randy White. There you go. Harvey Martin and Randy White in 1978, the only co-winners of a Super Bowl MVP award, were on the defense to force 8 turnovers in a rout of Dallas. Ooh, I love that. I'm sorry. No, I don't love that. That was a Dallas victory. Jake Scott, 1973, and then Chuck Howley, 1971. So there's a couple of names on here that you may recognize. Obviously, I was born in 1980, so I don't remember, Jake Scott or Chuck Howley or Harvey Martin or Randy White. But anyway, good topic. So I guess at the end of the day, do I agree or disagree? I disagree. I think that I think that Jalen Hurts was deserving of the award. I really do. I mean, he made the pass when they needed a pass. He stretched a play when they needed to stretch a play. And they made a lot of plays. But at the end of the day, I think that there needs to be a co-award. There needs to be 2 MVPs, offense and defense. And I'm not saying that everyone gets a participation trophy. I'm just saying make it make sense. Make it make sense. That's all I'm saying. Anything else you want to add to that?
No, I just thought that was rather comical that one player basically threw his MVP under the bus instead of saying, hey, Hurts was the MVP.
I mean, I guess you could make an argument, and I've heard it both ways, people trying to say that sacks won this game. No, turnovers won this game in the first half. Yeah. What the sacks did in the second half was continue to keep, Mahomes and company out of the end zone, really moving the ball at all. But, I haven't gone back to look at every sack as to what they did in the game. Like, I can't remember off the top of my head, so I don't have it written down. How many were on third down? How many were on fourth down? How many were, changing of possession type of sacks? Because to me, a sack is just a tackle unless it does something, to change possession of the ball, I guess is where I'm going with that. So yep. Next up, Micah Parsons recruiting Myles Garrett to come to Dallas. Now, first and foremost, I would say that Dallas is not a contender. I don't see them as a contender. Okay, they have Dak. Who else do they really have that makes them a contender? Okay, but they weren't even sniffing the playoffs in 2024. So how are they contenders is my question. I don't see Myles Garrett going to Dallas. I mean, if he wants all the lore of playing for the Cowboys, he would have to believe that team is closer than it's not. But again, I don't think that Myles Garrett leaving the Browns and what he has put out there, both on many shows during Super Bowl week, it's not about he wants to win a Super Bowl, right? He has limited time that he can play in this league to win a Super Bowl. I don't think that he's going to go to a team that was not at least in the divisional of this past season. I think from the divisional on, those are the teams that likely have a chance. And I think all of them honestly have a chance, and they all have enough, money and draft capital and everything else to make something happen. But Parsons refers to the Eagles as Thanos and friends. I'm not sure what that means, and wants Garrett to help him dethrone the Eagles is the statement. And then I guess to further this out a little bit, saw something pop up with NFL rumors. Look, NFL rumors on Twitter is not a legit place to find news. A lot of stuff that they post is just hot garbage. Myles Garrett's not looking to rework his contract to do anything. If he was going to rework his contract, then he would rework his contract before leaving the Browns. That way the Browns can not have to worry about all of the dead cap and everything that they're going to get when he leaves. So that's not happening. He's either going to play, sit, or he's going to be moved, and I think the likelihood that he's going to be moved is greater than not, or he's going to sit. He's not going to play this year for the Browns. What do you think about Myles going to Dallas?
I think there's zero chance. I think it's absolute fluff because he's already said he wants to go to a winner. Dallas is not a winner. Do you really think with Brian Schottenheimer as their head coach that they're going to do any better than they did with their former head coach? Dallas is a train wreck, and they have been for a couple of years. Even though they went 12-5 2 years in a row, they're still a train wreck. They just don't have it together.
No, they don't. And one reason I think that, Barry might be taking such a hardline stance is because it would be incredibly costly for the Browns to move on from Garrett this offseason. They would get a $48.6 million cap savings if they, over the next 3 seasons, if he's traded after June 1st. So I think that that's what we're looking at. If he is traded before June 1st, I think that you can tag him with a post-June 1 trade. I think that you can do that. I want to say I've seen it done before in the NFL, that you're going to make the move, but it's a post-June 1 release. That can all be worked out in the details of the trade, I believe. I don't think that affects draft capital, meaning you can still send the picks to the other team to use in this year's draft. But then again, maybe the Browns aren't, big hitters in this draft anyway. Maybe they're more concerned about 26 and 27 because it is a better quarterback draft. This is not a good quarterback draft. So with that said, I think that we're going to see some more defensive players taken earlier this year because of that fact that it's pretty light in the quarterback room this season. So, look, I think that Parsons' desire to play, with Garrett, it's admirable, right? I think who's to say that Parsons isn't going to be moved, from Dallas this year? I think there's still an opportunity for that. So, anyway, what's up next?
All right, next, Ohio State is hiring former Lions head coach Matt Patricia as their defensive coordinator. On Wednesday, ESPN reported that the reigning national champion Ohio State Buckeyes were finalizing a deal to make former Detroit Lions head coach Matt Patricia their new defensive play caller. The team had been searching for a new defensive coach ever since Jim Knowles accepted the defensive coordinator job at Penn State. So Buckeyes coach Ryan Day ultimately landed on Matt Patricia, a 3-time Super Bowl winning assistant with the previous head coaching experience with the Detroit Lions. There's hope that Patricia's experience will add value to a Buckeyes defense that dominated last season. So what do you think there, Michigan fans? Is this a good move or a bad move by Ohio State? I myself think it's a very bad move by Ohio State.
And I'm going to agree with that. I don't see. Well, you know what? Okay, let me teeter for a second. Coaching in the NFL is difficult. It's very difficult. And ever since he walked away from Bill Belichick and joined the Detroit Lions, his career has just been kind of fumbled quite a bit. And that's his own fault. He didn't work out as a head coach. He has not worked out as a coordinator really anywhere else. And I think that when you go back to the college ranks, he will have a better opportunity to coach a better defense. And what I mean by that, the game planning that he will be taking from the NFL, whether it's tape, situational, style of defense, scheming, whatever it is, it's going to be better at the college rank because not everybody's bringing that same level of scheme, down to the college rank. So I think that it could help Ohio State from a defensive standpoint, meaning they're going to have a better game plan. I mean, I think that he's still a good defensive coordinator, just not in the NFL. So he may be able to put together one of the best defenses, in college football. He might, but they still need the players to execute. And if he rubs people the wrong way like he was, in Detroit, that's not going to help him. So hopefully, he's figured out a few things. He's found a little bit of emotional intelligence, and that will help him, with Ohio State and building a really good defense. But look, Michigan's owned Ohio State for the last few seasons. I don't see that changing just yet, even though I'm not a Michigan fan. Michigan kind of had a tough year, but I would say that this is not a great move for Ohio State, but it has the potential to be.
Well, I think that the way that Matt Patricia, since leaving the Patriots, has treated players that he has coached says everything. And how is he going to go from grown men to teaching basically teenagers, people straight out of high school? They are a different breed now. And this old guy with this put you under my thumb mentality and berating people, I don't think it's going to work. So it's going to be quite the experiment to see how good or how bad old Matty Patty does for the Ohio State Buckeyes.
It'll be an interesting watch. I plan on doing a little bit more with college football this year. Obviously, this last season had a lot going on personally that kind of kept me out of the loop, but I do watch a lot of tape, and then that's the only thing that helps me preparing for college stuff. But I will say this, man. Next up, we're going to talk about Joe Burrow. So back to the Eagles for just a moment and the Bengals. So Joe Burrow, unlike Josh Sweat, came out and praised the Eagles for how they pay their players and manage their salary cap. And this was his quote. He said, "The Eagles are paying everybody. That seems like the way, whatever they are doing." End quote. Sounds familiar, right? Let me link this to the Detroit Lions for a moment. You bring the players in that you plan on keeping. You bring the players in that you've identified as core pieces. Then you add the, rotational players that you've identified as good, solid depth. And Brad Holmes, as we listened to yesterday, obviously his most important moves are depth. You can only have so many starters, right? You can only have so many alphas on a team. You can only have so many guys you can pay max contracts to. And if you want to keep the guys that you have drafted, well, that's a very finicky way to juggle, right? Because if you're trying to keep everyone, it's almost impossible. And nobody is going to put together an all-star team and pay everybody $1 to play. It just doesn't work. Or pay everybody the minimum, league minimum to play. It just doesn't happen. These guys only have so much to play this game. And at any given Sunday, their career could be done with an injury. So that's why guys just don't take peanuts to go play for a team that might be loaded or loading. They want their money. They deserve their money. This is their livelihood. Oftentimes, NFL players end up broke. Nobody wants to be broke. So anyway, according to Joe Burrow, he's obviously watching what they're doing over there. And this article went on to say that the Eagles locked up an offensive core of quarterback Jalen Hurts, wide receivers A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, guard Landon Dickerson, and tackle Jordan Mailata through 2028. That's per Spotrac. Brown's deal is through 2029. Meanwhile, though, in Cincinnati, Chase is entering the final year of his rookie deal. Higgins is an impending free agent. Trey Hendrickson, obviously the sack leader of 2024, might be on the move. He's also entering his final year of his deal. And tight end Mike Gesicki, who excelled on a one-year contract this last season, 65 catches, 665 yards, is also a free agent. So the Bengals have a lot to do. They have a lot of players that they need to get under contract. And Burrow's watching what's going on. And he wants to probably know why they're able to do it and other teams are not able to do it. And clearly, he's intrigued by this process and understands and knows that retaining players that you're building with is important. And the more you can retain, the more continuity you can have from season to season to season, the better off your team is going to be. And I guess to assimilate this to the Lions, they're in that situation too. We have some good free agents that are coming up this season. We also have some fourth-year players in the final year of their contracts that deserve extensions. Brad Holmes said that Kirby Joseph deserves an extension. He's up for an extension. That there haven't really been much talks just yet, but that is a player that he wants to keep. He said so in so many words that he is a player that they love to keep around. And I think the quote was something like, "We want to keep the good ones." Kirby's a good one, but is he affordable enough? And so these are all the things that these GMs and owners and coaches have to juggle, and it's not easy. But Burrow said this on FS1's Breakfast Ball with Paul Daner Jr. of The Athletic. He said, I do, Burrow said when he's asked if he had confidence in the front office to keep their core together. He went on to say that, quote, "We have the cap space to get it done. I want to make it happen. Everybody involved, Trey, T, Jamar, Mike G, we all want to stay together. When you have guys that are motivated like that, I think you can get those things done." I think what Burrow's asking for here is, look, just give me a shot. Like, keep my guys together. Give me a shot. I mean, look what I did this season. It was a hell of a comeback. Give me a shot. So Burrow, I mean, he's already been taken care of. He's got a 5-year, $275 million deal. So my question to Joe is this. How much are you willing to give up? Are you willing to renegotiate your contract? Because at the end of the day, this is just all hot air unless you're willing to be part of the solution. Eric, what is your response to Joe Burrow and obviously what the Eagles are doing?
Yeah, so Joe Burrow in here, he did say on February 6th that he would be willing to restructure his deal to give Cincinnati more cap space to get something done. he is pulling a Tom Brady. He wants to keep his team together. And I see why he does on offense, and a little bit on defense. I wouldn't want Trey Hendrickson going anywhere either, or either of the wide receivers. Maybe letting a tight end go wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, but the other three, I would want to keep them around as well if I was Joe Burrow. That guy played his butt off on a horrible team with 3 or 4 other really good guys. They got to keep that together. So management there, I don't know who the management team is for the Bengals. I've never looked into it, but maybe they do need to take a lesson from Brad Holmes and from the Eagles, teams like that. Go back and look what the Patriots did with Tom Brady, how they kept their core together for all those years. So maybe Joe's on to something. It's nice to see someone saying they're willing to redo their contract to keep other people around. They don't need to be the greediest. That's nice to see.
Yeah, it is. And you know what? I think it's the right approach too. I mean, these guys are making, especially $275 million contract. Even if you got a third of that, as guaranteed money, that is generational money after you invest it the right way and do the right things. And they're smart, right? It's generational money. I'm sorry. If you give me $1 million, I could turn that into generational money within probably 5 years. These guys have way more than that. And the one thing that I'll say about Tom Brady, and that's a very good analogy, is he didn't make any sort of a max contract until his final, I think it was 3 or 4 seasons of his career. So he averaged about $20 million a year as a quarterback. He was the highest paid quarterback one time in the NFL, I believe is the number. I don't think I'm wrong there. I'm pretty sure that it might have been his last year in New England where he actually got some real money. But in Tampa Bay, I think that is where he got his biggest contract for those 2 seasons. And look what he won with it. I've been saying it for a long time. If you want to take all the money, you're not going to take home any of the rings. If you want to be equal with your players and understand what it takes to win, get your money. But at the same time, at some point, you just have to wake up and realize if you're trying to go the distance and you're trying to get that ring that is fleeting for so many NFL players, take a pay cut just 1 year. If you want your team to go all in, you go all in. It can be done. We've seen it done. It doesn't mean that they're going to win the Super Bowl, but it gives them a better option and a bigger chance to make a big run. So last bit of NFL news today before we head into Detroitlions news. Eric, what's up next?
All right. Former wide receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs. This one's kind of sad, but I'll keep it short. Free agent wide receiver Cadarius Tony has been arrested for allegedly physically assaulting a woman last month during a domestic dispute at a residence in Douglasville, Georgia. According to an arrest warrant obtained by USA Today Sports on Wednesday, Tony allegedly strangled a woman with enough force to cause her to be unable to breathe during an altercation on January 14th, allegedly leaving the victim with red marks on her neck and petechial hemorrhaging in her eyes. Authorities also say Tony prevented the woman from seeking help, alleging he took her phone away when she attempted to call 911 and canceled voice commands for the phone to call 911 while physically assaulting her.
Wow.
Just sad how the mighty have fallen.
We saw this last year with Cam Sutton, and it is tragic, right? I typically don't like to talk about this stuff, but at the same time, I think we have to talk about it. We have to have a bigger voice. Domestic violence is not needed. Domestic violence has no place in any home. And when you listen to what you just said, the particular hemorrhaging and just saying that there's red marks on someone's throat is enough. But the fact that her eyes were probably bulged in bloodshot or whatever, assuming alleged, right? That means he put some force into this. And just like with Cam Sutton and the reports that came out of that whole, interaction, it was pretty bad. And I mean, this is really bad. I mean, I can tell you right now, just restricting someone from making a 911 call is a felony. That's not a light deal there. That is a felony. Also probably would get some sort of premeditation added to this. Will he be able to enter some sort of a pre-trial diversion plan? Cam Sutton got lucky, and they gave him a pre-trial diversion plan. You know, will this woman try to strike a deal with prosecutors and say, nope, I don't want to do this, you know, and unfortunately it was my fault. I had a, you know, deal in it. I don't believe any of that. You know, they'll probably try to pay the woman off and try to put this away. But if I'm the NFL, he's suspended immediately. And I'm sure that head injuries are going to be talked about in this case. And it's something that probably should be talked about in every case. You know, head injuries are real. And guys that are getting banged around in the NFL, we've seen a trend. Now, we've also seen a trend in the NFL where these types of cases haven't been happening as often, but it seems like we're getting like one really bad one every year. But my question is, how many are we not hearing about? How many are just kind of hushed and thrown under the rug? You're swept under the rug. So my heart goes out to the woman and all of those affected by Cadarius Tony. I hope the dude never plays it down in the NFL again, but that's unlikely. So tough subject, man. Really, really, really tough. He did, according to this news, though, he did, when he was arrested, this was February 6th, and he was charged with, obstruction of justice and aggravated assault, strangulation. For each charge, there was a $25,000 bond imposed. I mean, $25K? Make this dude hurt, right? I mean, he's making big money in the NFL. $25K is laughable. Put a couple extra zeros behind that. Maybe then people will think twice about putting their hands on a woman, even though money doesn't matter. It's a human life here. Anyway, I've said my piece. I've said it before. It doesn't belong anywhere. Not just the NFL. Domestic violence doesn't belong anywhere.
No. I have one little snippet about CTE, actually. And I forgot to put this on the sheet. There's a player that I have despised for 30 plus years. His name is Brett Favre. I have never cared for Brett Favre when he was a player, when he did all this other stuff that he apparently did after his playing career. But he did something I think is commendable this week. He signed up to donate his brain when he dies to be looked at for CTE. So he's donating his brain to science, and he has recently been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. So for someone that I don't care for to do something like that, it put him up a couple notches in my book. I still don't care for the guy, but I thought that was very interesting that he is giving his brain, because he was known to get a lot of concussions, and this was back before the NFL had all their concussion protocols that they have now. I remember him getting just floored, smashed, put into the dirt, gets up, shakes his head, and gets right back in, you know, and you knew he had a concussion. He knew he had a concussion, but he got back in and played anyway. And they're finding out that it's very dangerous to keep going once you have a concussion. Very, very dangerous.
Yeah, so it is commendable of Brett Favre to try to help further the education and look, CTE is, I feel like it's going to be a bigger, wider problem than I think a lot of people have considered. And unfortunately, since you don't know it's happening until after you've passed, at least for right now, the technology won't allow for anybody to figure out if you're suffering from that exact disease until after you die. Maybe there'll be some advancements in the future. But this is a big problem. And I think it's also, I think it's highly commendable that he's doing this. I saw something the other day, and Brett Favre, I don't know who he was talking to, but he said that he felt that he suffered thousands of concussions. Thousands. I mean, matter of fact, when you look at the definition, he said the definition of what, a concussion is today. But to keep it brief, when you're seeing stars, your brain is rattled, right? Your brain has been concussed. It is shaken. And he said he saw stars on just about every play. He said on just about every single hit that I took, I saw stars. And to think of how many snaps he took in the NFL, and he's saying that he believes that he suffered thousands of concussions during his career. And then he also spoke out, and I thought this was even more commendable. Do not allow your children to play tackle football until after age of 14. Maybe that's why we're seeing more NFL players that really haven't played until their sophomore or junior seasons in high school. They let their bodies develop. There's no real reason to play at a younger age now. That was my biggest fear as a father, was head injuries. Even though I love the sport, I was always worried for my kids. And we had a couple of scares. And, we'll never know what they suffered on the field. But I'm kind of glad they stopped playing and turned to baseball. Football's it's a tough sport. I'm glad they're trying to do as much as they can with the studies. And, big kudos to Brett Favre for doing this. So let's take a quick break from one of our sponsors. We'll be right back with your Detroit Lions news. And yes, Moonscar, we will get to him too. Better the Hunt Technologies and C3 Mitts, the ultimate hunting and multi-use glove system for hunters and outdoor enthusiasts. Now, C3 Mitts are designed to keep your bare hand protected and warm no matter what the weather throws at you. The patented attachment system was designed to keep your hand on target with the ultimate feel of comfort, confidence, and control. The triple layer barrier of moisture wicking material combined with 200 grams of thin slit insulation locks in the heat, but not the moisture. That hot hands pocket adds extra heat when the temps dip below freezing. Rain or snow, no problem for C3 Mitts. The durable outer shell is water resistant and windproof, shielding your hands from the elements. C3 Mitts has solved the cold, stiff, and shaky hand syndrome that all hunters have faced, causing you to miss opportunities on your hunt. Whether you're stalking your prey, chopping wood, or simply enjoying a winter's day, C3 Mitts have got you covered. So this winter, keep your hands warm and your adventures going strong with C3 Mitts. C3 Mitts, warmth, comfort, confidence, and control. I guarantee it, or your money. Okay, so getting into some Lions news, I'm going to go ahead and start with Moonscar's request. Wondering if we talked about the new coach for the Detroit Lions. So Iowa State football assistant head coach Tyler Roehl is joining the Detroit Lions offensive staff. I think we spoke about this yesterday briefly, but we can talk about it again quickly. Anyway, Iowa State obviously losing a very key member of their team. Cyclones have been getting better and better and better every single season. But as a assistant head coach to the college squad and running backs coach, Tyler Roehl is expected or is now hired as an offensive assistant for the Detroit Lions. We kind of went over what the assistant means. What are they going to do? What is an assistant coach for the Detroit Lions? They're going to do everything. They're going to assist everybody, the game planning, the scheming, the strategy. I mean, everything, even down to food and I mean, just absolutely anything and everything that gets done on and off the field, they're going to be a part of. They're kind of like a liaison to the players, to their specific coaches, if that makes sense. Obviously, this was reported by CBS Sports, Matt Zenitz, the other day, and then it was confirmed by Iowa State. So Roehl is now joined or is now part of the Detroit Lions coaching staff for 2025. Now, here's a couple of tidbits of info that I don't think we covered. Now, during his one and only season in Ames, he helped the Cyclones to a program record 11 wins. Iowa State also made its second Big 12 conference title game appearance and won the Pop-Tarts Bowl in an offensive shootout against Miami. He helped the Cyclones develop a three-pronged rushing attack, highlighted by the big step forward by Carson Hansen in his sophomore season. Hansen ran for a team best 752 yards and 13 TDs. And then Abu Sama III was also a prominent running back, finishing with 587 yards and 2 touchdowns. Overall, Iowa State ran for 2,247 rushing yards and 27 TDs as a team. Pretty impressive. I will say this, though. This is the second year in a row that the Cyclones have seen an assistant coach make the leap to the NFL. Last year, Matt Campbell's staff saw the departure of offensive coordinator Nate Scheelhaas, who joined the LA Rams as a passing game coordinator. Now, I don't think that Matt Campbell is any relation to Dan Campbell, but I'm not positive. So any quick tidbits from you on Roehl? And then I want to throw a couple of prospects at everybody.
There were rumors, just rumors, that possibly Matt Campbell was going to come join the Lions staff there for a little while as possibly the defensive coordinator, I believe, back when we were looking for a defensive coordinator.
Interesting. I didn't hear that one.
Yeah, that was one of the ones I had heard. It was just a rumor, though, was unsubstantiated. Or he was talked about as a possibility and how cool it would be to have Matt Campbell and Dan Campbell on the same team.
Interesting. So I think that when you look at these guys coming to your team, right, they're making the leap to the NFL. What do they bring with them? Well, I think the most important thing that they bring with them is the eyes on the players that they just coached, the eyes on the players from the Iowa State Cyclones. So when we look at the draft prospects for 2025, there's actually quite a few, in my opinion, that are going to get drafted this year. But if the Lions are looking for that big body wide receiver, Jaden Higgins is the man. Now, he's a Miami native. He attended Westminster Christian School in Palmetto Bay, Florida. And as a senior, he had 23 receptions. Oh, hold on. I just lost my mark. He had 23 receptions for 430 yards and 5 TDs in 5 games. It's pretty impressive for high school. He was only a 2-star recruit by 247 Sports, going unranked by other scouting services. And then he ends up, in Iowa State's program following the 2022 season, where now he is the 73rd ranked wide receiver overall. So, overall, he's a 73rd ranked prospect, which would put him firmly, in the early 3rd round, which again, Lions got a compensatory pick. That might be the spot where we grab a wide receiver. So I like Jaden Higgins. How about Darian Porter, cornerback from Iowa State? And he's also somebody that you'll be able to grab early in the 3rd round. Right now, as we know how things are slotted until we get through the combine. And then you also have wide receiver Jalen Knoll. Another, slot type receiver. Maybe we don't need another slot type receiver, but it all depends on what happens with our roster. But they also have a big time offensive tackle, and that is Jalen Travis. He's another Manu type. The dude's 6'7", 340 pounds, and get this, he ran a 40 in 5.15 seconds. That's moving for that big of a body. When you look at last year's draft player rankings, you had TJ Tampa, you had Easton Dean, and Jirel Brock of last season. I don't think that Brock was drafted. So this year, there's quite a few options coming out of the Cyclones. I think that all 4 of these guys are going to end up getting drafted right away. But I think that bringing in Roehl will give us a better look at these guys. So I would expect that at least one of those Cyclones will be on Brad Holmes' board and will be a pre-draft visit. I'm calling it now. We'll have an Iowa State Cyclone in Detroit for a pre-draft visit. Detroit Lions news continued. Eric, what's up next?
All right. So today I put a little something together about Marcus Davenport. Now, I posted something about Marcus Davenport on my Facebook page the other day, and it just went crazy. People saying what a bum he was, and then some people saying they want him back. So I thought, hey, this would make a great discussion to talk about Marcus Davenport and what it would look like if we brought him back, why we should, why we shouldn't. And let's look at his contract and let's see if it makes sense. Because to me, Davenport could be another cheaper. We could put him on another cheaper prove it deal that makes sense as long as it's for depth and not as a starter. I'm hopeful that we can address edge depth through the draft, as well as looking at cheap free agents such as Davenport. And as I truly believe, he has extreme upside, and the only thing holding him back is injury. And if he's used as a depth piece instead of a full-time starter, it may be a seriously good move for this offseason. And so the first thing I looked at was Spotrac, and I looked at what he was paid for last year and this year, because he had a dead year put onto his 1-year contract. So his contract was for, let's see, $6.5 million, if I remember correctly. And his cap hit for 2025 is $2.547.5 million. So $2.5 million for this year. He's already counting against the books. If he is on our roster day one, we owe him a $250,000 roster bonus for 2025. In his career, he's made $40 million already. He was a first round pick, number 14 overall. So the guy has potential. And out of his contract last year, at signing, he got $2.3 million. And his contract was laden with incentives. And that's one thing I think that if we re-sign him, it's going to have to be cheap, and it's going to have to be incentive based, and maybe something similar to what he signed last year, but a cheaper price tag overall because of the injuries. So he was in his contract, it was a per game active bonus of $50,000 per game with a cap of $850,000. And then the 2025 year automatically voids 5 days after the 2024 Super Bowl. So that's tomorrow, I believe. And then playing time incentives, he had, if he hit 40% of snaps, he'd get $250,000. At 50% of the snaps, he'd get $250,000. At 60% of the snaps, he would get $500,000. At 70% of the snaps, he'd get another $500,000. And at 80%, he'd get another $500,000, excuse me. And then sack incentives, if he got 6 sacks on the season, he would get $500,000. 8 sacks, another $500,000, and 10 sacks, another.
Okay, Eric, I lost internet, so bear with me for a second. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me or no?
I can't hear you anymore.
1 second. 1 second. One second. I don't know if anybody can even hear me in the chat, but Eric, for some reason, can't hear me. And apparently I've lost internet.
Are we back on?
I think, Eric, can you hear me or no? Eric can't hear me.
Can you guys hear me now? Everybody froze for a little bit. It sounds like Will lost internet for a minute.
Eric, let me know when you can hear me. I'm trying to reset everything.
I got you now.
Okay, I think we're coming back here. Again, these winter storms, they screw with us out here, which doesn't make any sense because all the cables are underground.
All right, they say they can hear us now.
All right, let me get my audio double checked here, and then we'll have to rewind and go back because I don't even know where you left off. Just double check your audio real quick.
Yep, check. 1 2 1 2.
Yeah, just check the number on your PC.
Yep.
All right.
All good.
Okay. Apologize. I'll go back and trim all that out later. But if we're still rolling, Eric, I don't even know where you left off or what they heard. So why don't we do this? Let's start Davenport over.
Okay. Marcus Davenport.
And I'll trim it all back out. So Eric, more Detroit Lions news. What's up next?
Here, let's see if I can do it better the second time. All right. I'm going to do a couple arguments, one for and one against re-signing Marcus Davenport to the Detroit Lions. All right. To me personally, I think it makes a lot of sense to bring Marcus Davenport back. And why would I say that? Well, I think we can get him super cheap. I think that his contract can be incentive laden. And I don't think he has the pressure of being a starter this year. Now, I think he's a great fill-in. I think he's great if a starter does go down. But I think we need to address this through either free agency with a cheaper free agent, or through the draft. And let's get our other end of the future. Let's have some bookends, and we can have him for a while on the cheap. But in the meantime, let's have someone that can fill in if that starter gets hurt. And that is Marcus Davenport. And that's exactly what I think the Detroit Lions should sign him for. Now, on the opposite side of that coin, Marcus Davenport gets hurt every single season. It seems he can never make it through an entire season with any team. He was the 14th overall pick in the first round. And this guy is going to be 29 years old in September. His original contract for 1 year with the Detroit Lions was $6.5 million with $3 million guaranteed and an average of $6.5 million. In 2025, Marcus Davenport will earn an incentive bonus of $250,000 while carrying a cap hit of $2.5 million and a dead cap value of $2.29, so $2.3 million. His contract for last year was very incentive laden. So he had a per game bonus of $50,000 per game. If he played all 17 games, it would have came out to $850,000. And then in 2025, his contract automatically voids 5 days after the 2024 Super Bowl. So that would be today or tomorrow, very soon coming up. And then his playing time incentives were cumulative. Okay. So
cumulative.
There we go. Man, some words just escape me. So 40% of playing time, he would get $250,000. If he played 50% of snaps, he would get $250,000. That's 60%, $500,000, 70%, another $500,000, and at 80%, another $500,000. And then he had sack incentives. If he got 6 sacks, he got $500,000. 8 sacks, he got $500,000. And 10 or more sacks, he got another $500,000. And then if he made the Pro Bowl, he got $500,000. So if we can give him that sort of contract where we're not necessarily kicking a whole bunch of stuff down the road, but a nice small contract with a small cap hit, I think he would fit perfect back into the Detroit Lions as a spot starter, role player, and not necessarily the full-time starter, because this guy was awesome at setting the edge, and he could crush the can. It was amazing what this guy could do. Now, he only played in a couple of games for the Lions, but while he was in there playing for the Lions, I need to find this here.
Half a sack.
He posted 14.3% 98% pass rush win rate in 2024 with 7 pressures. And for his career, according to Pro Football Focus, Davenport has 208 pressures. However, just 14 of those have come over the last 2 seasons, and his career high was 51 in 2019. So if we could keep this guy healthy and make him a role player instead of a starter on a nice cheap contract, somewhere between 3.5 and 4.5 million, I think that's the sweet spot. I think that's where he fits into the Detroit Lions. And if he becomes a starter, great. But I don't see us needing him to be a starter this year. And that's where I lay on Marcus Davenport. So let me know in the chat where you guys think. Do you think we should re-sign Marcus Davenport, or should we just let him walk in free agency?
Okay, so here's my response to that. You know that I'm a giant Marcus Davenport supporter, and I'm going to say a few things here. One, I think that there is a high likelihood that he could become a Jet, and I say that because Aaron Glenn was the biggest reason why Marcus Davenport came to Detroit, and I think that there is a high propensity, or high probability, that he could find a cheap contract with the Jets and join a rebuilding situation. However, I do believe Marcus Davenport was going to have a successful season. And I know that there's some people out there that believe anybody on the opposite side of Aiden has to be a $35 million guy, has to get 15 sacks, has to have 100 pressures. Look, nobody does that in the NFL. There's not one other team out there. Matter of fact, when we look at pressures, a rookie, edge, Jared Verse had the most, but guess who had the second most? I mean, guess who had, I guess, more of the least in the NFL this year? Edge rushers. But defensive tackles, Jalen Carter, second-year player, had the second most pressures. Why is it that I call for interior defensive linemen? It's because of that reason right there. And that is a large reason why the Eagles had an amazing season. But going back to Marcus Davenport, look, he started off hot, and I'm going to read this by Justin Rogers because it seems like a lot of people disagree with me when they think that Marcus Davenport was just injured and was oft injured, and it was his fault that he was injured. It wasn't. It wasn't his fault that he was injured. And I put out the video. I shared it again yesterday in the chat. Go watch the Davenport video that I put together showing his injury, because this was not Marcus Davenport just getting injured. This was Marcus Davenport intentionally getting injured. And I just came across this last night when he said yesterday he was going to talk about Davenport. Even Justin Rogers put that together. And he said, defensive end Marcus Davenport, he's eligible to return November 3rd, or since November 3rd of last year. He suffered a season-ending triceps injury when his left arm was chopped by Arizona Cardinals offensive lineman in the team's Week 3 matchup. Now, when you go watch the video, you'll see that not only was it chopped, but it was twisted and turned and pulled at the same time. That is not a natural offensive lineman move. A two-hand chop, a chop and move, whatever, a chop and slide, whatever they're going to do, that's a normal move. But this was an intent to injure move. Davenport was having his way with Paris Johnson. Paris Johnson didn't like it. And every snap that I watched of Marcus Davenport, it seemed like he was making a turn in his career. He did look healthy. He was able to crush the can, as Aaron Glenn and Eric just pointed out. He is a very reliable edge setter. And when you're looking for an opposite of Aiden, you're not looking for someone to mimic what Aiden does. That is a huge misconception amongst fans. If you want to go NASCAR, right, you just need speed ends, great. Different package altogether. But when you look at a 4-3 base defense, they typically do not have two defensive ends that are the same. You have one that is a speed end, and you have one that is an edge setter. You need him to set the edge so the ball goes towards your better defensive end and your better defensive tackle, Ali McNeil, and Aiden Hutchinson. That is what it's designed to do. If you can set the edge, which is what we're looking for in this draft, somebody that can set the edge, They can do plenty of work and help with production and shifting the production to the other side. The whole scheme in football, the whole reason why you play defensive end is to shut down your end. You want to lock up the outside. You don't allow anything to go to the outside. You force it to the inside. My case point, go watch the Eagles Super Bowl. They set the edge. They turned Mahomes inside. He ran through the center of the offense, and then that's where the interior defensive tackles and Josh Sweat coming from the other side were able to corral him and put him down or force bad throws. And I've been saying it all year long. Vindication 101 again. Flip the W, crash the end, force them inside. It's exactly what you're taught to do at every level of football. You are not taught to just run wild off the end and to crash down, and get out of the play, because that's what happens quite often for a lot of defensive ends that are just trying to get sacks. It works against you. But Davenport, look, signed last season. I think you went over this. It was for a 1 year, $6.5 million. And because of the injury, I think a slight decrease in his market value is probably attainable. But if Detroit were to bring him back, I am predicting a 1 year deal with a lower base salary. I think it makes sense. I think it, like you said, it'd be highly incentivized and based around playing time and in his production to a degree, because Marcus Davenport has never been a huge production guy. When I look at his stats, his 20, let's see, let me wind it back. His 2018 season, he had 4.5. 2019, he had 6. 2020, 1.5. 21, he had 9. And then he was injured pretty badly. He had half a sack in 22. He had 2 sacks in 23. And he had half a sack in basically 2 games in 2024. But to your point too, Eric, a 14.3% pass rush win rate, that's pretty damn good. That's really good. So it's not that Davenport wasn't contributing. It's not that Davenport wasn't producing. He was. There's a reason why Aiden had 5.5 sacks in some of these games, or 3 sacks in some of these games. It's because the other side was doing his job. It's also because Aiden was going up against 3rd and 4th string offensive tackles and guards. But the other side was doing their job. So I do like Davenport to come back. I think that it is a good move. And again, I don't think it is a move to solidify that side. I think it's a move to stack depth. Remember, we still have Josh Paschal. And Josh Paschal also played a role on defensive end this season that he didn't normally play, and he also set the edge pretty well. Again, he didn't have a ton of production with sacks. He just needs to set the edge. So now if we have Josh Paschal and Davenport rotating in at that end, and Zadarius Smith, by the way, and Aiden Hutchinson, those 4 guys, that creates a very good roster, number one. Number two, you then address it in the draft. You bring in a young pup early that can learn from all 4 of these guys that can be the next up-and-coming edge of 2025 or 2026. More than likely 2026, he'll get his shot at being a starter. But having a good rotation and having all of these guys on your team helps protect against something else too, and that's injuries, right? We need depth of good guys. Everyone cries and says, well, man, we didn't have anybody opposite of Aiden that was working, and, when is Brad going to address it? Brad, it's his fault, and he didn't do anything. And look, you have those 4 guys, that is a great foundation. And you bring in a rookie, and now you have 5 defensive ends. Again, nobody has a 6th and a 7th. Nobody. There's only 53 spots on a roster. If you lose 5 defensive ends, I'm sorry, there's nothing else that could have been done. There's nothing. Matter of fact, if you lose 4, typically nothing can be done. Better yet, if you lose 1, you're usually in a hole. So quit blaming Brad. Davenport should come back. I just don't know that he doesn't become a Jet before the Lions bring him back. And I'm not sure on the Jets. I'm not sure on the Jets cap and draft. And now that they're releasing Aaron Rodgers, what that looks like for them. But they could be players for the Davenport lottery coming in free agency. So good topic, man. Good subject, because I was high on Davenport after I did work on him last year. I was not high when he came in. Because of the injuries, it was a little concerning. But again, I will stand on my two toes here. Davenport was not injured because of his own inability to stay healthy. In my opinion, he was intentionally injured. That is a major difference. And I don't think that there's been a lot of people. Matter of fact, we had a guy in the chat yesterday, which I don't think he's in today. He was complaining about Davenport. And he was complaining that Davenport was injured all the time, and it was his fault that he got injured this season. And I said, kindly, go watch this video I put together last year. And then come back and tell me that I'm wrong, that he was intentionally injured. He went and watched the video as soon as we got off, and he messaged through a comment and said, basically, you're right. It does look like he was injured intentionally. To some degree, he said that. So go watch it. Just search up Davenport in the search queue on my page or on the channel's page, and you'll find it. So,
and I think the Detroit Lions did something that no other team in history has ever done. All four of our day one against the Rams, day one starters on our line, all four of them. So you had, who was it week one? We had Aiden Hutchinson, Aleem McNeil. I don't remember who was playing for Reader that game. Was it Pecco started that game?
I'm sorry, which game?
The very first game of the year.
Pecco was starting a defensive tackle.
Yeah, for the very first game, right?
I think so, yeah, because wasn't Reader still out?
Yeah, so Reader did not play the first game. So you had Aiden Hutchinson, Aleem McNeil, Pecco, and then on the opposite side, you had Davenport. All four of those players did not make it through the season. You name me one other 15-2 team that their entire day one starting line was decimated and ended up on IR.
Right.
It's never happened before.
It's craziness.
You can't prepare for that.
No.
There's no way to do it. It just doesn't happen. Doesn't happen. Go look at the Bills this year. They had one person, I think, on IR for the whole year. It's crazy.
The Bills, yeah, they only had a few.
Yeah,
they were extremely healthy.
Extremely healthy. And, you know, I hear people all the time saying, when are we going to get rid of our health and conditioning coaches? I'm sorry, but health and conditioning coaches have nothing to do with broken bones and people getting their arms slapped. These are things that can't be stopped. And then people are asking if it's the Ford Field turf, why all these ACLs are happening. I don't know. I don't have any answers for that.
Well, Sheila went out and bought the best turf possible.
Yep.
After receiving some complaints, she went out and spent all that money to bring in brand new turf before last season. Yeah. So we have the best turf possible. But if you go and compare where a lot of injuries happened, it wasn't just on turf. And I see that, you know, the comments in here that Davenport was always injured. Every player is injured every year. It's just whether or not they actually make the designation list, right? They make the injury list. Every player is injured. It's just you got to understand too that it's a move for these teams to place players on IR, because if they're going to be out a game or two and they want to bring somebody up, they stash them on IR, they bring somebody in, they bring that player back in 5 weeks. So just because they're injured and they're put on IR, unless it's season ending, I don't pay any attention to that. Look how many times we put guys on IR this year and brought them back. You could say the same thing for all of the Detroit Lions that got injured this year. Well, they're injured all the time. Iffy, injured all the time.
Mosley.
Right? Mosley, injured all the time. We keep bringing him back, and y'all were all hyped about Mosley. This is no different. I'll tell you what. So Davenport in 2015 had a non-NFL shoulder injury. Non-NFL. He missed one game. And then from 2015 to 2018, no injuries. And then 2018, he had a hand-thumb fracture. He suffered a thumb injury in workouts in June. He had surgery and then returned in August. Didn't miss a game. Then he had a pedal toe sprain in October 28th of 2018 season. He missed 3 games with an injury to his big toe on his right foot. Probably got stepped on. Part of the game. You can't deny that stuff. And then he had a pedal Liz Frank fracture in 2019. So far throughout 4 seasons, he's missed 3 games. In 2019, he had sustained a foot injury during the game versus the 49ers. He underwent season-ending surgery. So he missed all of 2019 after December 1st. So what did he miss? 4 games? 4 games. That's it. And then 2020, he missed 3 straight practices due to his elbow injury ahead of the season opener against the Buccaneers. He missed 4 games. So far through that's 6 seasons, he missed 12 games. Do you realize that through 4 seasons, Carlton Davis missed 23? 4 seasons, he missed 23 games. Through 6 seasons, he only missed 12. I didn't hear anybody complaining about Carlton Davis. September 30 of 2020, Davenport missed New Orleans practices after injuring his toe again ahead of the Week 4 game against Detroit, but he was active for the next game. And then December 4 of 2020, he missed Week 13's game against the Falcons due to a concussion. Again, things that you can't stop. You can't stop a concussion. September 12, 2021, he had a pectoral strain, grade 2, and didn't miss any time. But then he did. Then a few days later, he was placed on IR ahead of Week 2. So in 2021, he missed like 4 games, right? 4 games? Yeah, 4 games. So he came back after the chest pectoral strain and the shoulder injury. He came back after 4 games. In 2021, November 24, he missed weeks 12 and 13 due to shoulder injury, same shoulder. And then in January 6th, so end of the season, he was questionable to play in Week 18 against the Falcons due to an ankle injury. Pedal ankle. So, I mean, some of this stuff is just little ticky-tacky stuff. That's all it is. Throughout his entire career, he's missed 4, 6, 7, 8, 16, 19, 20 games through 2024. And then obviously we know what happened after the second game of this last season. So let's see, how long has he been in the NFL? That's weird. I'm sorry. They for some reason listed him in 2015 in the NFL. He didn't start in the NFL until 2018. So through 4 seasons for him, he still missed less games than Carlton Davis. All ticky-tacky stuff. You can't stop any of this stuff from happening. It's part of the game. And I'm not so worried about injuries. I mean, I did hear what Corey Wood said yesterday, that he thinks that, one of Brad Holmes' biggest mistakes is bringing in guys that are injured. Yeah, at some point, you don't want to bring in guys that are injured. I've never been, one of those supporters of bringing in injured guys, but let me ask you this. Do you want J-Mo on the team or don't you? We got him because he was injured. That's the only reason why we got him. It turned out to be a pretty good pick so far. I mean, a lot of issues, but pretty good pick so far. Anyway, what's next here on our sheet? Lions week 1.
Yep.
Could our opponent be the Eagles, and could it be on prime time? I honestly have not looked at the schedule as far as what are the opening week potentials, but because we were a playoff team and where we ended, and being the 29th pick, there is a certain way that they put these together. I haven't analyzed it. This was a Riley topic, so I'm just going to leave it as a question for now. Do you want to play the Eagles opening week? And do you want to play the Eagles in prime time? I think it would be prime time. Without a doubt, I don't think you're playing the Eagles in week 1 if it's not prime time. I have a feeling the Eagles will probably play the Commanders, though. I think that's going to be the rematch for them in week 1. It could be the Lions and Chiefs. Are we playing the Chiefs this year?
Yes.
Could be the Lions and Chiefs again.
Yeah. So there's 5 possibilities for this game against Philly: the Chicago Bears, the Los Angeles Rams, the Dallas Cowboys, the Detroit Lions, and the Washington Commanders. But everything I've seen so far is pointing to a rematch of the Washington Commanders and Philly at Philly for game 1.
I just dialed ads back. I know we're not quite up to 75. I'm not going to do the math. Is 62 75% of 85? I don't think it is. I think it's close.
We were there for a while, though.
I'll just shut it off for the rest of the day. You guys all deserve it. We'll turn it off. There you go. Okay, and I would love to take on, one of these teams early in the season. I think that's where the Lions, obviously, there's a blessing that I'm going to talk about in this next segment. Eric, I want to skip to a bigger segment.
Okay.
I want to skip down to the coordinators and Super Bowl segment.
All right.
I honestly believe that it's a blessing that we are kind of resetting a little bit. So, Eric, go ahead and start us off here with Detroit Lions news, coordinators and Super Bowls, and what the media and some Lions fans may be concerned about.
All right. Apparently, Lions fans and media members are worried about the Detroit Lions coordinators change. However, the Eagles just won the Super Bowl with 2 new coordinators in year 1.
Yeah, so I think that there was a couple of articles that came out kind of sort of speaking to this ideology and partially calling out the Lions for the ability or lack thereof to make a run in 2025 due to coaching changes. Now, Dave Burkett wrote his piece on the 9th, and Carlos Menares wrote his on the 11th. I have to be honest, I really only respect Dave in this situation, only because of the past with Carlos. I just have never really gravitated to him at all. But in this case, Burkett's error in his article is what I will address. But had this article been written on the 10th, this error wouldn't have been written at all. This was an opinion. It was an opinion piece that he wrote on the 9th. And as history would have changed overnight, obviously Dave would have got it right. So this is not a shot at Dave. I'm just kind of being funny with it. So the main article points were this. The Detroit Lions will have 2 new coordinators this season, obviously offensive and defensive. We have a total of 8 different coaches and 8 assistants already this offseason. The Philadelphia Eagles, they were trying to become the first team since the 2009 Saints to win a Super Bowl with a returning coach and 2 new coordinators, and they did just that. So it has been done. This is the first time it's ever been done, because I believe I don't think the Saints won that year, did they? I don't remember now.
Not sure.
But anyway, this, according to some history, this is the first time it's happened with 2 new coordinators making a Super Bowl and actually winning with their team in the first season. So the reason why I said that this article is wrong by David Burkett was simple. It was just written a day early. That's all he did. He just wrote it early. So here's what Dave said. No team with a returning coach and 2 new coordinators has won a Super Bowl since the 2009 Saints. So that answers that question. A feat that the Detroit Lions will try to accomplish this year. 2 other teams with 2 new coordinators have won it all. 2 other teams with 2 new coordinators have won it all in the past 15 seasons. The 2015 Denver Broncos won the Super Bowl with new play callers on both sides of the ball under first-year head coach Gary Kubiak. And the 2012 Ravens also won the Super Bowl with 2 new coordinators after Cam Cameron was fired as the offensive coordinator mid-season, and Jim Caldwell was then promoted in his place. Riley was going to be doing this segment with me, but let me ask you, Eric, what is the status of the Lions coaching tree according to David Burkett? And this did not include Mr. Roehl, by the way.
I have something going on.
What's
getting
that?
Some weird sound.
Okay, I'll keep it rolling here. So this is supposed to be Eric's part. The Lions have lost 8 assistants already this offseason, including offensive coordinator Ben Johnson and defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn. Johnson, the NFL assistant coach of the year, by the way, was hired as the head coach of the Chicago Bears 2 days after the Lions season ended with a divisional playoff loss to the Washington Commanders. Now, Glenn, who ran the Lions defense in 2021 through 2024, obviously was hired a few days later as the head coach for the New York Jets. Now, Dan Campbell said in his end-of-season news conference this past month that the team cannot let coaching turnover impact its ability to contend in 2025. So Dan Campbell's end-of-season quote went a little something like this. We are not going to allow that to happen. Let me get this in front of me better. We are not going to allow that to happen. I'm not. Does it hurt to lose those guys? Absolutely. They are part of what we have been here. I mean, they've been here for 4 years. They are one of the major reasons why we have been able to get to where we have been. We came out of the dump and got to where we are at. So, man, I will forever be grateful for those guys, and our team will too. And it is a loss. Absolutely, it'd be a loss. But yet, man, we move forward. This train rolls on, and I'll find the next best guys for us. And he did. I think that Dan Campbell absolutely did. Bringing in, Shaw and others to this team and promoting Shepard, I think it was the right move. And Morton, all great pickups for this team. Now, Carlos Menares said this. He said, quote, I trust the Detroit Lions' Dan Campbell, but here is my biggest worry about the 2025 season. His concerns simmered around the fact that there are concerns about replacing Ben Johnson. And the new coordinators, John Morton and Calvin Shepard, they face high expectations with little room for error. Menares also noted that everywhere he has gone since the Lions lost Johnson and defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn to head coaching jobs, people have asked him if the Lions are going to be okay. My short answer has been yes, according to Menares, based mostly on head coach Dan Campbell's ability to astutely guide the direction of this team. But he also noted a quote by Terry Bradshaw. Quote, you can have the same plays, okay? The 4-time Super Bowl champion said this, by the way, Terry Bradshaw. He said, you can run the same plays on offense, but great coordinators, it's when they use those plays and the formations that they use to dictate coverage. That's the specialty of an offensive coordinator. When you look at the 32 teams in the NFL, there are not that many great coordinators. There's a lot of coordinators, right? There's not a lot of great ones. You know what I'm saying? But boy, losing Johnson, that hurt Detroit. Close quote. So to kind of wrap this up and kind of give you my take, at the end of the day, Menares said that he still believes, even as several assistants have left Detroit, at least offensive line coach Hank Fraley stayed and will ensure continuity on the team's most important unit. That Dan Campbell has 2 superpowers as a coach. The most important is his ability to communicate with anyone and everyone on their level. I call that being a chameleon in sales. Players, coaches, personnel people, executives, media, his owner. Campbell knows how to connect. That is a rare quality, I might add. Campbell has shown he's willing to make tough decisions. Some of us call those Dan Gambles. Even if it means replacing assistants to ensure the team's success. And Dan did just that. He replaced anybody and everybody that he needed to. Obviously, he didn't have a choice with some of those decisions because that decision was made for him. Here's my take. Are the Lions going to be okay? Yes. Are we going to be better than what we were in 2024? Yes. And if you don't believe so, here's why. What happened when Ben Johnson really had his first full season as the 2023 offensive coordinator? We had our best season yet. Our best season offensively. I want to say that he took over the duties about halfway through 2022, maybe week 10. And we started that epic comeback of that season, finished 9-8, and then rolled right into 2024. I mean, we were hitting on all cylinders. The reason why is when you add a new coordinator, your language has changed, your scheme has changed, the way you run plays and the balance that you run plays has changed. The teams that were starting to slowly figure you out, they have to restart. They have to start from scratch. They have to learn the Detroit Lions again. Sometimes, now I've always said you want to keep your coordinators as long as you can. But I would also add that maybe 4 seasons could be the limit. And I'm not saying that just because we lost these guys. But the more I thought about this subject, unless you're going to install all new terminology every year, which a lot of coaches do, and install a new scheme every year, which teams don't, unless they bring in new coordinators. When you reset the floor with new coordinators, new scheme, new terms, new coaching style, new swag, new balance, teams have to catch up to you now. The best time to play these teams, the best teams on our schedule, is going to be in the early part of the season, because we're going to be coming out of nowhere, right? They're not going to know what we're doing. So unless they think that they're going to be able to gain something from preseason, which they won't, we're going to be like a brand new football team again, but we're not brand new. We still have one of the best offenses in the league, personnel-wise. All we're doing is changing up the scheme, the terminology, and the balance at which we run plays. And on the defensive side of the football, I think that Calvin Shepard has learned what not to do from Aaron Glenn. He's also learned what to do from Aaron Glenn. So I think that he'll take the best parts of what he has learned and mold that into a defense, which, again, by the way, we have retained and will retain some of the best personnel this team has ever seen. Lions are going to be okay in 2025. The Lions are still in this Super Bowl window, if you want to call it. Hell, I wouldn't say it's just a window. This is a bay window now. When we look out this window, we see everything. We see every team, and we have a big chance. Lions will be in the playoffs in 25. Dare I say they might run it back. They might run it back and get the 1 seed. They're definitely going to take the NFC North by storm for the third season in a row. Lions will be back in 2025, and the coordinators are not the problem. They are part of the solution. So, Eric, your quick thoughts on this segment here.
Yeah, hopefully I'm not snap, crackle, and popping anymore. Gremlins came back out. Apologize for that. So our coordinators, I think with having Calvin Shepard be our defensive coordinator, not much is going to change. He might put his own spin on things, but do you remember earlier in the season when a picture came out on Instagram, and it was a picture of Jahmyr Gibbs standing in front of the whiteboard with all the plays on it, right? And everybody was worried that all these defenses were going to have our plays and our play calls. They change these things on almost a weekly basis. So having a new coordinator, and then having a coordinator that was once with us on the offensive side of the ball as well, is going to help. He's going to know what to do. He's going to work well with Jared Goff. They may have some new language for the plays, but I think it's going to be seamless. I think this is going to be a seamless transition on both offense and defense. I don't think we're going to have any problem whatsoever. And maybe we'll run the ball when we're supposed to run the ball this time.
I want to highlight Josh Jackson's comment for just a moment here. He says, I think we'll be better. We're going to have some growing pains those first 6 to 8 games while the team gels and learns each other with all of the turnover, especially at leadership coaching roles. I would agree and disagree with this one, Josh Jackson, and thank you for the comment there in the chat. I agree and disagree on this only because we have the same players, mostly the same players that are starting. At least on the offensive side of the football, really nothing's changing. We could lose Tim Patrick, but who else? Zeitler? That's about it, really. I think that we're good offensively. Defensively, again, I think that we have a large portion of starters in place. We're going to see a few new names, but I think because we still have the same head coach, we still have a large body of assistants that have, that are rolling over from year to year. I think that we're going to be all right. I don't think it's going to take us 6 to 8 games, but I would agree with a little bit of the stumbling blocks, out of the gate here. It might be the first 2 or 3 games. And what I'm hoping is it's not worse than normal, because we know that Jared Goff every single season stumbles a little bit. Maybe he's a little bit slow to get going in those first couple of games. And then he kind of just takes off into he settles in and takes off. He usually throws the majority of his picks through the first 5 games of every season. Unlike this last year, he had one really bad game. But let me throw this at you guys. This is a question, and I know I haven't been asking a whole lot of questions today, but definitely in the comments and in the chat, and to you, Eric. Because of all the new coordinators and assistants, do the Lions actually play in preseason? Some starters.
I don't think it changes.
If we take Dan at Dan's word, he sticks to his identity, right? And the identity is we're going to be who we are and not change a damn thing, which was postseason talk. We're not going to rest guys. We're not going to do this. I think that Dan has a growing moment this year. And I think that Dan will play the starters a little bit more in preseason. I think it's a wise thing to do, especially when you can't start slow this year. You just can't. You start slow, the media is going to get on you. They're going to say, I told you so. Lions aren't going to have it this year. And once that confidence-building media out there starts to put all that shit in the air, it does infect teams. They do see your stuff. So I think that Dan's going to make a tough decision and probably play his starters for a full half, is what I'm thinking. A full half. At least one game. Maybe it's a second, maybe it's a third game, but I think he's going to play. It'll probably be the second game. A full half in the second game. And then obviously we're going to need to see what, all the rookies are doing and all the UDFAs are doing to make decisions for cuts in the third game. So that's my take on that. Hopefully we get some good comments in the chat as well as the comments on the video after the live is done. Let us know what you think about the Detroit Lions coordinators and new assistants, and where are we going to be this season? Are we going to stumble out of the gate? Are we going to hit the ground running? Are we going to be just fine? We'll figure all that out in short order, man. This season's going to be upon us pretty quickly. So, Eric, up next, you put together another segment of cap casualties. This is going to continue to throw us into free agency talk and draft talk. Next week will be more heavy. I will have my first mock draft done this weekend. It'll come out probably this weekend. I know I'm way behind everybody, and I try not to look at the Mel Kipers or the Bruglers or the Jeremiahs. I try to do my own after I've done enough tape work and can figure out who these guys are. So, Eric, Detroit Lions topic, potentially the last topic of the day, cap casualties for the Lions. Who could they be and why?
All right, so possible cap casualties for the 2025 Detroit Lions. Currently, the Lions have $46.5 million in available cap space for the 2025 season. Detroit will need money for free agents, drafted players, and would also benefit from added space for years to come for potential extensions. So there's some extensions they got to get done. There's free agents, and there's drafted players. So we need money for all of that. And here are some possible cap casualties. But before I get into that, cap casualties are unavoidable in the NFL. And projecting which players could be cut from the roster, especially starters, is not a fun exercise. These are ultimately human beings with families. So I want to start this section by saying that I'm not suggesting the players below should be cut. Rather, here are some of the players who could provide cap relief if the Lions are looking to do so. And we're going to look at 5 players, some on offense, some on defense, one on special teams. And you guys let me know what you think of these being cap casualties. So number 1, we have edge Cadarius Smith, acquired from the Browns at the trade deadline, would probably be the best running mate Hutchinson has had during his time in Detroit. He's due $11.6 million spread out over 2 years in 2025, and the Lions could wipe the slate clean without any dead cap by releasing him after the new league year begins. Still, $11.6 million is a perfectly fair rate for a guy who consistently provides 60-plus pressures and has averaged 8 sacks over his last 3 seasons. A contract restructuring could be in order, but cutting Smith altogether would be short-sighted in my opinion. So what do you guys think? Could Cadarius Smith be a possible cap casualty?
So, Eric, I guess my 2 cents on this, he's probably going to want his contracts have been funny. They've been real funny. He's probably looking for a little bit of an extension here. If the Lions believe in his work, and if the Lions are planning on drafting a rookie, I would say that the 11.6 that is spread out over 2 years is definitely easy to pay. I don't necessarily think that he's going to be a cap casualty as much as he could be trade bait. So for right now, this is kind of a, I don't know, wait and see approach. But I don't think that the Lions would move off of him just for cap purposes. But I'll go back to you.
All right. Myself, I think Cadarius Smith is going to be here next year for a defensive end that can get that kind of pressure. That's good money, good contract, as long as he's willing to play out the last year of his contract, which is another funny, sticky issue. All these players not wanting to fulfill their contracts. They sign these contracts and then they don't want to play the final season of their contract because they think they're due more money. I will never understand it. If I was a GM, I would try to make them all play for their entire contracts. All right, up next, we have offensive guard Graham Glasgow. Glasgow moved to left guard after the Lions signed Zeitler and had one of his most disappointing seasons in a Lions uniform. There's a chance moving Glasgow back to right guard and letting Mahogany take over at left guard could solve the Lions' problem. But if they'd prefer to keep Zeitler, cutting Glasgow after June 1st is an option. Detroit would incur just $2.4 million in dead cap for 2025 and $1.4 million in 2026 and 2027, while freeing up $5 million in 2025 and $7 million in 2026. This one's intriguing. Would you rather release Graham Glasgow and re-sign Zeitler? Or would you rather let Glasgow go and keep Zeitler? You know, one of the two, and switch and put Mahogany in there.
Okay, so on this one, it's tricky. I don't think that there's a direct correlation between Zeitler and Glasgow on this. I think that this is more of, was Glasgow a letdown in 2024? Look, I wanted him back. He was high on my free agency list last year. He was a must sign for Detroit. The contract that he received was not unfair to Detroit. I think it was a good contract for both parties. Glasgow's getting a little bit older. He does have good relationships with everybody on the offensive line prior to arriving in Detroit, but now more than ever. I think that there's an opportunity for Glasgow to move back to right guard and still have an effective season. I think his fish out of water moment this season, he was just not playing well at left guard. Now, when he filled in 2023 at pretty much every position across the offensive line, but right tackle, he played very well. He had some of the best grades along the offensive line in those respective games. For whatever reason this year, he just did not play well on the left side. So I would say moving him back to the right tackle or right guard position is step number one. I think step number two is introducing Mahogany in as your left guard starter, at least through training camp to see, was 24 a fluke or does this guy got it? And then furthermore, I don't think that you let Glasgow go just to save 2.84. So you're talking about 5.2 million over 3 seasons. I don't think that's enough money to save for the experience that Glasgow brings. And if he has a light bulb moment and comes back this season with a vengeance and plays really well at right guard, then I think you've already answered the question. But I think you do backfill. I think that right guard is a position in the draft, and bringing in Glasgow or keeping Glasgow and promoting Mahogany kind of helps you with that. So I don't think that Glasgow goes anywhere. I don't think 5.2 over 3 seasons is enough money to save for his experience and ability. And I think that he'll be back at right guard this season. Back to you.
I'm not sure on this one because I'm not sure if we bring Zeitler back or not. Just depends on how much money he's going to want. So next up, we have defensive tackle DJ Reader. And this is one that I really didn't see coming. Reader was one of Detroit's marquee acquisitions last offseason, and he played a pivotal role in the middle of the line. But he's also the 9th highest paid player on the team and has a cap hit of $12.9 million next season. By cutting Reader post June 1st, the Lions could save $11.7 million in cap space in 2025 and $2.5 million in 26, while incurring a $4.9 million total in dead cap spread out over the next 4 seasons and at $1.2 million per year. But like in Smith's situation, cutting Reader would immediately present a hole at their biggest position of need. So again, it's probably short-sighted. In my opinion, that is very short-sighted. I truly believe that our number 1 pick in this draft needs to be defensive line. It needs to be a big defensive tackle, because Aleem McNeil is gone for half or 3/4 of this next season. And then if you don't have DJ Reader there, man, that's just a giant hole you would have to fill. So this one I would be totally against.
Okay. So this one is tricky. I know there's a lot of people that say, well, DJ Reader didn't do much this year. Well, actually, he had more sacks this year than he's had before. He had a pretty damn good season. Coming back from this quad injury, I think that we have to give that some credit into his case for this season. He came back, in my opinion, early, right? He came back early. No one expected him to be ready by week 2, was it? I think he was when he started. I was hoping that he was going to get in by week 5, and they'd put him on IR for the first 4 games of the season. Well, none of that happened. And I think that DJ Reader was probably a little bit more comfortable along this defensive line, as you got closer to midway through the season. And then at that point, you're banged up already anyway. I think that when you look at what he was able to help this team do and the fact that Aleem McNeil is out, you can't get away from DJ Reader. There's no way you can walk away from him right now, even though a post-June 1 is $11.7 million in cap space saved and $2.5 in 26. Only $4.9 million in dead cap. I mean, that is a savings worth taking a shot on. But who are you going to replace him for? So my question to everybody in the chat and the comments later would be this. For $11.7 million, who are you going to sign that is better than DJ Reader? Now, if you can take a shot at Milton Williams, again, I don't know that that's the full answer here, but I would at least say it's going to take probably $20 million or more to sign Milton Williams. Do you then spend another $20 million on a top-tier defensive tackle that's paired with Aleem McNeil for the next 3-4 seasons? Possibly. I don't think you can walk away from DJ Reader unless there's a clear-cut winner that you can find in free agency that isn't going to cost you much more. I think that they can spend a few more bucks and get, a multi-year deal out of this. Maybe they just extend DJ Reader an extra season or 2 and backload it and backload his guaranteed money to the final year. So that way you can move off of him and not lose out, a bunch of dead cap. So I would say renegotiate with him before cutting him. And then I would only trade or cut or release if you have a better option that isn't going to cost you a ton more. So that would be my take on DJ Reader. Back to you, Eric.
Yep. So up next, we have linebacker Jalen Reeves-Maybin. Reeves-Maybin is a culture guy who's 1 year removed from making an all-pro as a special teamer. His cap hit is $4.6 million next season, which isn't bad for a player who can reliably contribute on defense. Cutting him at any point this offseason, either before or after June 1st, would result in a $2.7 million in dead money and free up $1.9 million in cap space, which isn't a whole lot, but could end up mattering if the Lions are going to push the cap to its limit. And that's something that I don't think we've ever seen the Lions do. The Lions just do not push the cap to the limit. They always leave some money for them to dabble with in the season. So if they run into a season like this last season with all the injuries, they can actually bring people in and have some money to at least spend a little bit on it. That's how they were able to get Zadarius Smith this year. But Jalen Reeves-Maybin, I think he is 100% a culture guy. He is someone that keeps that special teams unit all glued together. Now, he had injury this year and he missed some games this year. I believe he went on IR for a little bit and came back, but he's a great fill-in for a player or two on defense. So I just think he offers too much to have him as a cap casualty this year. And his contract is cheap. He is not an expensive guy.
Okay, so, man, Jalen Reeves-Maybin. I mean, you love the guy for his effort, his attitude, his leadership, but he was always a special teamer to me. Always has been. Was never big on this contract that they handed out to him. I thought it was a mistake. Now, he did make his way back. He did play, the last couple of games of the season. Again, I just don't see a savings here. So his cap hit's $4.6 million. I mean, that's not bad for somebody that's reliable, someone that is a leader. Cutting him at any point this offseason, like you said, would be a $2.7 million dead cap hit, but it does free up $1.9 million. See, I don't like that trade-off. I think that when you look at cutting somebody, releasing them, whatever the case may be, those numbers need to be flipped. You need to be saving more than you're losing. I don't think that Jalen's going to get cut. I think that he's going to battle it out in camp. I think that he's going to have competition at linebacker. I'm expecting Brad Holmes to probably bring in one free agent linebacker and possibly two in the draft. At least one, but possibly two in the draft, so that we can get younger again and develop for the future, but also bring somebody in that can be the leader of this group along with Alex Anzalone. Because I got to remember, he's also up against it. And Mr. Thomas in the chat, I put a comment in there to answer the 3-tech question, but there's just not enough room for me to finish it. So let me do this. I'll just repost this second half to it. There you go. There's your answer. Back to you, Eric. Who's next?
All right. So this is our last one. And this is Mr. Special Teamer Khalif Raymond. Raymond is one of the most beloved players on the team and is entering the second season of a 2-year extension signed in 2023. He's also another culture guy, so it might be hard to see the Lions parting ways with him, but the financials of it could make sense. With a post-June 1st cut, the Lions would free up $4.8 million in cap space for 2025, while incurring an additional $1.6 million in dead money for 2026. Now, I'll say this about Khalif Raymond. The first game I ever saw him play in was the first game of Dan Campbell's tenure, and that was against San Francisco at the Detroitlions. And I got there super early. I wanted to see what was going on. And I look out on the field, and there's this guy. I have no clue who he is. His name's Khalif Raymond, and he's out there with another wide receiver that we had just drafted in the 4th round, Mr. Amon-Ra St. Brown. And they're laying on their backs, throwing a football back and forth to each other, and they're just talking to each other. And, you can tell they're vibing with each other, and they're totally working one-on-one with each other. And I knew that he was taking Amon-Ra under his wing and teaching him everything he knew. And I thought that was so super cool to see a veteran from another team come to our team and teach this brand new rookie what to do and how to do it. And the rookie never got in the game. Khalif Raymond did a little bit here and there. And he was our kick returner, I think, that day, and our punt returner. And I just remember thinking, man, this guy's got the player coaching thing down. I love to see this. And then he's just, over the last couple of years, He's done really well for the Lions in the roles that we've asked him to play in. And I think every year it's less and less of a wide receiver role, and it's more and more of a punt return special teams role. And if you go back to the Jaguars game, Khalif Raymond had the game of his life. He was the special teams player of the month, and he had the game of a lifetime. So that's why I don't think they would cut him, but the money makes sense. So maybe he's a guy that's up for a renegotiation of his deal if he wants to stick around with the Lions, because I know at some point the Lions are going to want to go younger at wide receiver. They're going to want to go younger at special teams in the punt returner, kick returner game, because every game I went to this year, I saw Amon-Ra St. Brown, I saw Jahmyr Gibbs, and I saw J-Mo all shagging punts or all shagging kickoffs. So I think the writing's kind of on the wall that Khalif Raymond may not be here for the long run. This last year or this year may be the last year of Khalif Raymond. What do you think, Will?
Well, let me say this. You never know how important a guy is. So I was not high on Khalif Raymond before last season making the squad. I thought that the Lions would have been much more benefited had they gone out and drafted a wide receiver or brought somebody else in. I've just never been high on the short wide receivers. Now, I know very few of them succeed in the NFL. But Khalif is a special teamer, and you do need three phases on a football team. Khalif had an epic year returning punts and kicks. At one point, I think he had the most punt return yards ever. At least for the franchise, I think. It might have been an NFL record. You can correct me on that later in the chat or the comments below. But something sticks out that he had like the most punt return yards of the season. Something was going on there. Epic season. We know it. Yeah, you may not be returning them all for touchdowns, but when you're, giving us 40-yard field position quite often, or better than 35-yard field position, that's really good. You're putting your team in a positive, start mode to be able to take that drive down the field. So, look, Khalif does more for this team than he doesn't. Now, this is a scenario where his cap savings is way more than cap lost or dead cap, and that's where things start to get tricky. Can the Lions take $4.8 million they're going to save from Khalif? Can they take $11.7 million that they could save from Smith? I'm sorry. Could they take the where's he at? Where's Reader? Could they take the $11.7 million that they would save from Reader? You package that up. You lose two guys, but now you bring in a top tier defensive tackle, right? Or you bring in an even better. Better edge than Zadarius Smith. Or you bring in a Zach Bond. So I think you have to look at all of these things seriously. And I'm going to say the same thing that I said the other day. You cannot have emotional attachment to your players. You just can't. Love them when they're here. Kiss them bye when they're gone. Because the only way that this team stays fluid, the only way that this team is able to compete every season is by having the best 53, or really 69, football players that you can possibly have on your roster. And sometimes that means you have to say goodbye. Look, every time we've lost a player, how many of you in week 4 were sitting on your couch watching the game saying, man, I wish that player was in the game? Not once you didn't say that. So from time to time, we look back and we look at the guys that we brought in and we say, it would have been nice to have Josh Reynolds in this game. Man, Josh Reynolds was contributing big time, at this point in time. And then Tim Patrick woke up and had a few good games. Coming back from some major injuries. Again, another injury guy. Had a good season for what it was. So at some point you got to say goodbye, but I don't believe the Lions are going to do that. with Khalif Raymond. I think that they could potentially trade him. I think that there's a possibility that you could trade Khalif Raymond because of what he did this last season in punt returns. But that's the tough part of this business, right? I have no emotional attachment to people. You know, if I was a GM, I would have no emotional attachment. Obviously, you want to keep the guys that are good for your team. Khalif's good for your team. But if you call, I don't care what team it is, and you say, look, I got DJ Reader and Khalif Raymond is a package deal, and I want this player, and you know what, we'll go ahead and pay, you know, a little bit of some, you know, we'll renegotiate their contracts. We'll pay a little bit of their salaries. Or, you know what, I got DJ Reader and Khalif Raymond, and I need a second-round pick. Yeah, you're losing two good guys, but what are you going to do with that second-round pick? Probably a whole lot more. So I would say that the door is always open. It's always open. But Khalif, I think, is better on this team than he's not, unless at some point they start using JMO or Gibbs or somebody else back there returning punts that has the ability to break it. But then again, I don't want to see those guys get injured. And putting them in that situation, I think, has a higher probability of getting injured, and we don't want to see that. So, yeah, good segment, Eric. Good work. I think the last thing I'm going to end on here, or a couple of things here, a couple of news and notes. This channel is going to change a little bit. We're going to be getting back to some of the things that I started doing last year. So there's going to be some slight modifications and changes. We're going to be doing some cool segments and continue to highlight, you know, Eric's good work and Riley's good work, and bringing in more people, more guests. It's going to be fun. I'm going to try to step away when I can, and that way I can do a couple of night shows and not be on 7, 8, 10 times a week. I got other, you know, career things that I have to take care of. So we'll see where everything goes. But I want to put this out there. You know, a lot of fans make a lot of claims. Can't stand Broderick Martin. Aiden Hutchinson's going to have 20-plus sacks. So I think, you know what I'm going to do, Eric? I'm going to turn Rock's Locks into something, and I'm going to do it from a betting perspective. I'm going to put out like an over-under type of deal where it's going to be posted and it's going to stay posted. And if you want to make a season bet on some things, a couple of things have to happen. That bet has to get paid right away, just like you would with any other betting situation. Now, this is not a gambling situation. This is for the Rockhound Cancer Foundation. So I think I'm going to put together some things that when I see from fans, for instance, JMO's going to be traded. Okay, when I see that, I'm going to say, all right, over under. JMO is going to be traded. You could place a donation anywhere between $25 and $100. And you can place that donation by Buy Me a Coffee. You go in and you put your donation. It'll be in Buy Me a Coffee. You can buy a ticket. I'll create a ticket for it. And if you win, the goal is you can either say, you know what, keep the money, Will, put it towards the foundation, or pay me what I put in, but you keep that money and put it towards the foundation instead, or you just take your money and run. Whatever you want to do, cold-hearted bastards. So that's what I'm doing. I'm going to put it together, and we're going to have some fun with it. Someone kind of brought this up last year, and they said, Will, why don't you do something like, you know, put your money where your mouth is, and we'll put, pick games or records or whatever we're going to do. We'll put like $10 in a pot or something like that. And then whatever, you know, goes towards Rockhound Cancer Foundation. I thought that was an excellent idea. I was just too deep into the season to do something with it. So this year there's going to be squares for every season, or for every game, for every Lions game. We're only going to do the Lions game. And when one sheet fills up, we can start another sheet, but we'll start with just one sheet a week. So we're going to do that. The other thing that we'll make sure that we do this year is the Rockhound Cancer Foundation fantasy football. We'll get the league started early, like soon. Like I'm already looking, as soon as I can start the leagues, I'm going to get them going. and we'll do like a dynasty league or something so that it can stay consistent every year. And we'll do another league too. But there's some other things like, oh, I don't know how they rephrase this, but if you have ideas, obviously send them into mailbag@rockdown.com. But the other thing was somehow betting on, either picking the Lions record, picking the Lions wins and losses, and just putting very, very small, bits of money down. And if you win, you take your money and run, or you put it towards the foundation, whatever you'd like to do. I think we make it fun. We make it fun. We track it. And then obviously everything will be in Buy Me a Coffee where, it stays, and that way you get receipts and all that good stuff too. So
I like what Brandy Coffee says here. I bet St. Brown would come on your show. That'd be great. Get him on.
I don't know. We'll try to get some guests on. I had some good former football players on last year. I just got too deep this year with my health and everything I had going on. All the trips to Cleveland, it just was too much to juggle. I'm hoping that I don't have that much going on this year. Matter of fact, I think I missed an appointment today. I better look. Anyway, anything else? If you guys think of anything, if there's anything that you want to do, we'll do it. Turned Up Tailgates will be back in action this year, and I'm going to be working on the float as soon as weather allows it. We're going to have smoker, grills, pizza stations. We're going to be doing real food. Like, it'll be $50 to come and eat, right? But we're going to have a bar. It's going to be like a restaurant on wheels with a podcast station, with merchandise. Merch is coming. I started it. It went nowhere. I'm going to get back to it. I got a lot of work to do. I need helpers. If you guys want to donate your time, if there's anything that you're good at, like social media, website building, I don't care what it is. If you're good in sales and you want to start calling for sponsors, just call me, right? Or email me, and I will make you part of this team. I need a team to take this to the next level. I think that we can do it, and it all starts this season. I've got a tall order before June to get to 50K, so I need as much help as I can get. If I can get to 50K, I'm going to get 50K every year for 10 years. And a company stepped up and said that they were going to do that for us. I just have to get to 50K. So we got a long way to go. I thought it would go much, further than it did. Obviously, there's some idiot that's been spreading misinformation, disinformation, slander, and defamation. So, that could have hurt my business. It could have hurt my cancer foundation. And that's why my lawyers are on top of it. And, it probably won't end well for that individual. But, hey, people are going to hate me for that too. I didn't open my mouth. I'm not the one that spreads lies. So we'll see what happens. We do good things here. We want to help people. That's what Rockdown Cancer Foundation is all about. Aside from doing what we're doing each and every day, trying to bring good topics to light. So final 30, 60, 90 to you, Eric.
Well, Mr. Thomas in here had a really good thing. He said, when we had Jamal Williams, everyone was attached to him. And when we let him go and we brought in Montgomery, everybody questioned Brad Holmes.
Great point.
So sometimes it's better to not be emotional with these players and not get so tied up in them. So it could literally be something that turns out to be a very good thing for us in the long run.
Yeah. RP, you're funny. So there's one thing you guys have to know about me. I grew up a Michigan fan. So we'll get off topic for a moment. I grew up a Michigan fan. And I was 13 years old. I'd finally seen enough of Michigan letting me down in the Rose Bowls. And I had enough. But something also happened, which I'm not proud of, but I was a young, stupid teenager. My sister brought me to siblings weekend at Michigan State. And let's just say, I think I was 14 at the time. Let's just say that I woke up in someone's dorm. No idea how I got there. And I'm looking to my left and my right, and there's like caiman alligators, cobras, tarantulas, and all sorts of weird reptiles and insects that were live in cages. This dorm was full, or apartment, whatever I was in, was just full of all these crazy exotic animals. Had to have been some sort of a animal biologist or whatever, but freaked the hell out of me. But I was also in no condition. Like, I didn't know where I was. That was my first time ever being stupid, if you know what I mean. And it was at that point, I'm like, hell yeah, I'm a Spartan. This is cool. And so I became a Spartan. Obviously, I supported my sister going to Michigan State. And you know, hey, Michigan State went on a great run, a phenomenal run. It's been an epic rivalry between Michigan and Michigan State. No, I don't necessarily root for Ohio State ever. But I get along with everybody. Like, I'm not one of the Michigan State fans, you know, that they can't get along with people. I recognize game when there's game. I respect, you know, I give it where it's due, where it's owed. But doing this, like Saturdays and Sundays, they don't mix, right? They just don't mix. I separate my Saturdays from my Sundays. That's why you never hear me talk about Michigan State anything on this. Matter of fact, I talk more about Michigan than I do Michigan State. And that's the only reason why is because a lot of people think that every Michigan player should be a Lion. And I poo-poo that because it doesn't happen. 2, it doesn't make sense. And 3, that is you blending your Saturday into your Sunday. You can't do that. You gotta put up a wall. You gotta put up a divider there and put some blinders on and realize that not every Michigan great is going to become part of your favorite NFL team. So I get along with everyone. All teams. I mean, it's just like an NFL team, right? You've got Taylor Decker. He's a Buckeye. Aiden Hutchinson's a Wolverine. They get along just fine. They have fun. You know, they razz each other up. They do some bets throughout the season. So it's the same way for me. I like to have fun with it. That's what it's all about for me. I've even gone to watch Michigan games. I've brought my kids there. I've gone to watch Michigan games because I love it. I love all football. Michigan Stadium's iconic. I love it. It's a great stadium. All right, now final 30. You got anything else you want to add?
I've never been to the big house.
Yo, you got to go.
Been past it. I've never been to a game. So this year, one of my things, since I'm going to be a season ticket holder this year, is I know for sure I'm going to all the games. Went to all of them last year. But this year, what I'm going to do is there's going to be a game on a Saturday where I can go to the Michigan game and then the next day go to the Lions game. And then I'm going to do the same thing with Central. So my dad lives in Lake Isabella, basically Mount Pleasant. And my stepmom, she works for CMU. So I'm going to try to get a CMU game in and then a Lions game the next day as well.
Yeah, it's good stuff, man. We're going to have to make some Panthers games this year. So I'd like to get everybody to go to some Panthers games. They're cheap tickets. I might do some raffles, or I might just give some away or something. We're going to do a lot of different stuff this season. 10,000. When we reach 10,000, like, that is the only goal I really have for this channel, because after that, 100,000 is the next goal, and that's going to be a long way away. And by then, I'll have 50 other channels created. 10,000 is the goal. So I'm going to give away 2 tickets to opening day for the Detroit Lions. That is going to be the giveaway, and that will be a wheel spin. I might even start a $1 raffle, you know, and you can buy as many tickets as you want, but I might start a $1 raffle for some tickets as well. Also training camp packages. We'll be doing training camp. But to answer the question earlier, someone had asked about, you know, what is this turned up tailgates all about? So everything is going to go to Rockhound Cancer Foundation. I'm going to do high-end food. It's not necessarily a potluck. I'm going to do some higher-end foods that you're not going to see anywhere else at any other tailgate. And I come from a food background. I wanted to be a chef when I was younger. I worked in high-end fine dining restaurants while I managed the family business at Goodyear. And that's just what I did. I love food. So I'm going to do high-end food. Of course, all the money, all the proceeds are going to go to the foundation. That's the goal. I don't drink, but there will be spirits there for purchase. You know, there'll be other things, or donation, I should say. So that's what it's all about, whoever asked.
I'll say this. That's my one complaint about tailgates that I've been to in Detroit so far, is the food is lacking.
I've never seen such poor attempts at food.
Yeah.
I don't get it. Like, I understand we don't have a whole lot of time before games. We just don't, especially a 1 p.m. game. You just don't have a lot of time. So what I do is prep, right? You get everything done before, you put everything into coolers so it stays, safe, right? Food safe. I'm food safe certified still. And then you have the right equipment to heat everything up quickly. But the reason why this float is so important, Eric, is because I'm going to have everything built in that while I'm going down the road, that stuff is hot. It'll be cooking. And, I could time it out 2.5 hours to Detroit. It's staying warm or it's hot. So I just hope I can pull off this float because it is about a $10,000 idea. And the biggest thing that I'm trying to figure out right now is how to make the giant lions. Like, I don't want to get it cut out of metal because I think it's just going to be too heavy. Yeah. So I need something made out of like a thick PVC that the wind won't mess with. So if anyone knows how to do it, let me know. I've searched the internet high and low and I can't find anything. Anything else in the chat? Yeah, UFL is definitely getting exciting. I think that, hey, we might find another guy this year from there. Who knows? Corey Patterson says, my daughter goes to state. We almost stopped speaking. That's hilarious.
See, I think the UFL made one big mistake. And they were going to push their season back to March 8th to start. And now it doesn't start until the 20th or something, 23rd, 24th, something like that. I really think they made a mistake by not just having 1 or 2 weeks off from after the Super Bowl and get it kicked off. I always thought that it's too much time in between. People lose interest.
Yeah, so as far as the spirits, I will be partnering with the local party store owner. Really good dude. Really good dude down here in Gun Lake. He sponsored a bunch of cases of beer for Megan Stefanski's tailgates. So, I mean, hundreds of dollars worth of beer. I probably will do a keg as opposed to cans, but then again, I don't know how shaken it's going to be after driving around. I'm not real sure. I'm not sure on that yet. We'll see. All right, that's it for today. I'll be back tomorrow. Probably do movie day again tomorrow if I don't do it tonight. My goal is to try to get back tonight and do another show, but I got to get on the phone here. Someone's been trying to call me for a minute. So, all right, that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed the show this morning. We'll be back tomorrow. Hopefully Riley's feeling better and he can get back in the saddle. We left a few topics for him. We didn't do them all. We left a few for him. So, all right, you guys have a wonderful day. Go in pride. Go Detroitlions. We'll catch you guys tomorrow. Detroit Lions.